What should I do if I can't introvert myself even after so many spiritual practices? Why am I not getting forward? So I think what he means by not able to introvert himself is probably not able to go within, not able to still the mind, not able to connect with that part inside of ourselves. And he says, of course, even after so many spiritual practices. And sometimes the effort with which we do the practice can actually end up being the impediment to the goal we're looking for. And that sounds backwards, I know. But when we remember that this ultimate goal is connecting with who we are. So it's not about becoming something new. It's not about learning some new skill that is outside of me. It's not about, being born in India and learning to speak Greek that you've never heard of. It's not about being born and then learning how to play basketball. Things that you've never been exposed to. It's not that. It's simply removing that which is not self and reconnecting to the self. So there shouldn't need to be any very complex, esoteric, difficult techniques to know the self. We need to do something because we are so wrapped up in the not self. We're so wrapped up in the body, in the world around us, in our relationships. But if what we're focused on so much is the technique, is the practice, then it's no wonder I'm not able to connect deeply within. And that happens sometimes, ironically, is all my attention, all my focus goes on the technique instead of on, well, where's the technique supposed to take me? What's the end goal here? There's a great story that I love of these 3 guys who are stranded on an island, and they're scared and worried, of course, they're going to die. And they pray and pray that someone should rescue them. And one day they open their eyes and there's this canoe on the shore. And they're ecstatic and they jump in the canoe and they row themselves back to the mainland. And a few weeks later, someone sees them walking through the market and they've got this canoe on their head. They're walking in a line holding the canoe on their heads. And the person says, "Why are you carrying a canoe on your head?" They said, "Oh, well, this canoe, it saved our life. We were stranded on the island, and this canoe, it showed up, and it saved us." And the person said, "Well, that's great, but why are you carrying it on your head through the marketplace?" And again, they said, "Well, God, this canoe, it saved our life, and we were stranded, and we're so indebted to this canoe." And the reason that I love the story is, yeah, the canoe saved their life. It's great. It was a miracle of grace. But now it's fulfilled its job. The point of the canoe was to get them across the water back to the mainland. To continue to carry a canoe on your head, walking through the marketplace, makes no sense. And it actually ends up handicapping you. Because there's not much you can do when you've got both your arms up and you're carrying a canoe. And the same thing happens a lot with our attachment to specific practices or specific techniques, is it becomes about the practice. It becomes about the technique rather than being about where we're going. Because the truth is, it doesn't matter whether it was a canoe. It could have been anything. It could have been a raft. It could have been jet skis. It could have been a rowboat. It could have been a yacht. It doesn't matter what vehicle it was. What matters is they were able to use it to get across. And the same is true with our spiritual meditation techniques. It's about getting us back to the self. But if we're so focused on the technique, then rather than becoming one with the self, we're becoming one with the technique. Like these guys became so one with their canoe that now they, carried it with them through the marketplace. And so if you find that you're not moving forward, ask yourself, well, how much have I merged with my true self versus how much have I merged with a technique? How much have I merged with a stringent practice rather than with myself? And can I soften that? Can I bring some just awareness? Loving awareness if I've got the heart for it. Open-hearted, spacious awareness into that space. Because physics tells us the universe hates a vacuum. So where space is created, something goes in to fill it. And the same thing happens in our meditation, in our spiritual practice. The more space we're able to create, the more we're able to get out of the way. Get our minds out of the way, get our thoughts out of the way, get our egos out of the way, get our shopping lists out of the way. The more we're able to get them out of the way, the more space is created. And into that space, grace flows. And so if that space is so occupied by, I've got to remember the technique in which I lost count. What number was I on? That's now what's occupying my space. How many times I'm supposed to chant my mantra, how many breaths, what count of the inhalation, what count of the exhalation. I mean, they're beautiful techniques. But like the canoe, they're techniques to just take us across the water. Not techniques for us to get stuck into. And ultimately the goal is just how can I create space in which who I really am, that truth can emerge. Because it's there. We don't need to do something fancy or esoteric in order to make it there. It's already there. What we need is some assistance removing the stuff that blocks it from our vision. And that's the ego, and that's the illusion, and that's the expectations, and that's the anger, and that's our grudges, and that's all this stuff. So that's what the techniques help us do. But you don't want to substitute one thing that's filling your mind for another thing that's filling your mind, because in either case the mind is full. And really what we want to do is create stillness and space. And so for my brother online who's asking this question, I'd say, don't worry for a moment about the practice. You mentioned you've done so many practices. Take a break from the practice and just sit with the self. Just go within. Allow that space to be created and see what flows into it.